Today we're going to talk about the Orcust deck because we have the new cards coming out probably in June with the new Battles of Legends set. Specifically in this video, I want to talk about how this deck can play around Nibiru because it's kind of a glaring issue. If you watch the Orcust combo video that I put out for the Orcust deck after the new cards come out, the Link 1 and the Link 4, you'll notice that we don't put up any Omni Negates, and a well-timed Nibiru can pretty much ruin your day. And that's why we are going to be able to supplement the Orcust deck with other engines to deal with the Nibiru problem. So I want to talk about each of these engines that we can pick from, and we're going to weigh the pros and cons and I want to talk about which one that I'm leaning towards the most right now as my top choice for something to deal with Nib. We have three engines in particular here in the Fiend Smith, the Azamina, and the Horus engine that are going to actually synergize fairly well with this Orcust deck, and I want to talk about which ones are, which one I would favor going forward. So let's just go through them one by one and talk about the pros and cons when it comes to playing them in Orcust. Starting off with the hot topic of the current format, which is going to be the Fiend Smith cards. The Fiend Smith engine, assuming there's no ban list, is going to look like 3 Engraver, a Lacrima, a Lurie, maybe 1 to 2 Tract, and then probably the trap card as well, Fiend Smith in Paradise. Basically, this engine is going to turbo you into a DDD Wave High King Caesar as your Nibiru out. It's not going to take your normal summon generally, unless you unfortunately open up Lurie or Lacrima, I guess, as well. But yeah, you can pretty easily set up Caesar before you even start playing with your Orcust cards. It doesn't take your normal summon or anything like that, so we can go ahead normal summon any of our normal summon Orcust starters, which are Girsu, Harp, and Symbol. After the new support, those are all starters, normal summonable, with a Caesar already on board. So what's wrong with that? Like, obviously Fiendsmith is fantastic in the current meta, so why would we not obviously just keep playing Fiendsmith, right? The issue is that basically we have a really huge extra deck requirement coming with Fiendsmith. Not only are we playing Caesar, but we're playing Requiem, we're playing Sequence, we're playing Agnum Day maybe, you can cut this, sure. We're playing Necroquip, we're playing Fiendsmith Desiree for the trap card at the very least, and then, hey, Chaos Angel is so good, and it's just Fiendsmith engine is Chaos Angel Turbo. So we're basically forcing in 6 to 8 cards if we include Moon and Agnum Day as well to facilitate this engine. And yeah, a lot of decks deal with this today. We have Ryziel Fiendsmith playing 8 Fiendsmith extra deck cards. So yeah, it's really rough requirement because Orcust has a really large extra deck requirement already, probably with at least 10 cards of its own. So we're going to have to cut down on some of our interruptions. We're not going to get the full Fiendsmith value that we're used to. We're going to have to maybe cut out on the Paradise or cut out on the Lacrima and just focus on a full DDD Wave High King Caesar Turbo engine and kind of just deal with the consequences. We're not going to get the traditional Fiendsmith follow-up. Another downside is that you really have to start with the Fiendsmith cards. You can't rely on Moon of the Closed Heaven because your Orcust effects all lock you into dark monsters for the rest of the turn. So it's really actually kind of hard to get 2 Orcust monsters on board into a Moon of the Closed Heaven without going into your Orcust plays. Unless you open specifically Girsu, you're going to have a hard time getting into Moon, into Caesar, and if you spend your Girsu on this, you're going to lose out on some of your link materials for Orcust cards. So yeah, this card is not very reliable to get into. Like I said, you have to open Girsu specifically to go into Moon to get into your Fiendsmith stuff, which, hey, is possible. It's another set of starters. So with 3 Girsus, 3 Engravers, 2 tracks, that's 8 cards that will get you to a DDD Wave High King Caesar and still have Harp Horror in your graveyard to banish and continue playing from there. So hey, that might not be so bad and we can consider actually playing this, but we do, like I said, have to start with the Fiendsmith cards first because we can't be locked into darks. We have to commit a whole lot of deck space to it if we're going to actually play the engine to its full potential. Probably this card too, Agnum Day, is very good, so I really would hesitate to cut that card. So 7 cards in the extra, 8 cards in the main deck. It's a lot. Okay, so that's basically the outline of Fiendsmith in Orcust specifically. Now, unlike the other two engines that we're going to talk about, which are going to be Azamina and Horus, we don't have any additional synergy with the Orcust cards. Like, Fiendsmith will not facilitate any Orcust plays at all, essentially. Whereas the Azamina and Horus cards, which we'll talk about in a second, they discard stuff from your hand, which is often good. It's like almost a starting play for your Orcust cards. You want to be discarding your Orcust Nightmare. You want to be discarding your Orcust Harp Horror. So those will actually facilitate a little play. Plus, we're going to see other synergies from those other engines. But honestly, Fiendsmith is just doing its own thing. Okay? It's just generally a separate package from your Orcust cards. And there's not really any overlap. So, I don't know. It's some kind of synergy to at least, I don't know, put up some bodies for link material. But not really. Like, we're not really cooking too much with Fiendsmith. It's just going to be the same old Fiendsmith that we know already. Okay, now let's move on to the next engine, which is going to be... We'll talk about the Azamina cards next here. So for that Azamina engine, we're going to be looking at something like 3 Wanted. It's your best starter, generally. And then some number of Diabell Star, I'm not sure. And then some number of Deception, probably 1 or 2. And then, of course, the 1 Hollowed. Okay, so this is going to be our main deck requirement for this particular engine. The numbers may vary. It depends which one you want to open. You probably want to play 3 Wanted. At least 1 Diabell Star and 1 Deception. And then 1 Hollowed as well. And like all 5 of these will get you to the Hollowed or get you to your engine. It depends how consistent you need to be playing around Nib. But yeah, that's our main deck requirement. And then our extra deck requirement is basically only going to be the Illusylvia. It's kind of all the engine does. It's kind of a downside as well as an upside. Like, it's a very limited engine, but on the downside, it's a very limited engine. You're not getting anything out of that. Going second to break boards, like summoning an Illusylvia, is not that wonderful, right? It's just a 1900 body, basically. So, and it's going to cost you a whole bunch of cards out of your hand. If you start with Wanted to search Diabell Star, okay, now we have to discard something to summon Diabell Star. We got the Deception. We have to discard something to get the Hollowed Azamina. So we're just discarding cards, okay? Which is good in Orcust, because like I said, if we have Orcust cards in hand or Orcust monsters in hand, we want to be discarding those. Like, if I'm opening Orcust Nightmare, I would love to open Diabell Star, okay? But if I open, like, Gearsu and some quality non-engine, I don't want to be discarding it necessarily. So it's kind of a trade-off here on, you know, how consistently are we discarding cards we want to discard, and when are we discarding, like, good cards? So that's kind of tough. We can play something like Mu Arcielago to maybe get into some other part of your engine, but I don't think it's super necessary. I've also seen the OCG builds play the Queen Azamina as a monster in the main deck as something to search, but I don't know if I see too much value in that. But yeah, this is just another option. Another benefit of this is that these are all dark attribute, which means we can summon them after getting locked by the Orcust cards, except for Orcust Crescendo, because that one locks you into Dark Machine specifically, so we're not going to be using that. But yeah, if we draw into this, say with Orchestrated Return, then we can still play. We can still put up the Illusylvia without worrying about our attribute lock. Okay, so that is a benefit. Hey, Editing Chris here. One more thing, because this engine is all dark, it does allow us to continue playing Dominus Impulse in the deck, which is another Nibiru counter, so that's another solid reason to play this particular engine. The last engine I want to talk about is going to be the Horus engine. Now, Horus plays around Nibiru because we are able to summon this number 90 Galaxy Eyes Photon Lord, which is a monster negate. So the engine requirements are basically going to be 3 Steady, 1 Happy at the minimum. Some number of King Sark. I only own 1, that's why I'm only showing 1 right now, but you can play up to 3 probably as well. And then you can also play this card, Walls of the Imperial Tomb, if you really want to. So that could get a little bricky, but I don't know. And then we have the other Horus monsters optionally. It depends how much of a Horus engine that you want to be playing. So yeah, this is the main deck requirements. I mean, at minimum 5 cards, at like at a normal level, probably the other two King Sark, and then at max we just max out on like all these options, and that's like what, 10 cards or so. In the extra deck, we're going to be able to play not only number 90, but we're also going to have number 38, Hope Harbinger. If we're worried about breakers, we can put up a Spell Trap Negate, or we can go into the Zombie Vampire, which is going to be a little bit of an engine support. Like, if we don't open any Orcust cards or we kind of brick, we can just go ahead and summon Zombie Vampire, mill 4 cards from our deck as well as our opponents. But we're probably going to hit an Orcust card that's important. All we have to do is hit Harp, or we have to hit Orcust Nightmare generally, or we have to hit like Symbol in combination with any of our Orcust cards as well, and those will all get the job done. So we do have a bridge from this engine not only into a nib out, but also into our other engines as well, kind of with a little luck of the mill. Which is going to be pretty likely milling 4 if we're maxing out on our Orcust cards like we should be. So this is going to be our other engine, our third engine to counter Nibiru. Unlike the Azamina engine, this one does have mixed attributes for the Nibiru counterpart, because Mseti is dark, but Happy is going to be wind, Photon Lord is going to be light, Hope Harbinger is also going to be light. So if we draw into this later in the combo, we can't really do much with it. We can at least summon Mseti as a body, and then if for some reason we can summon another rank 8 or level 8, we can go into Zombie Vampire. And another cool thing is we can just hard make Dingirsu as well. We're already playing rank 8s in the extra deck as it is, so there's a little bit of synergy there as well, which is not too bad. But generally, yeah, these are going to be our 3 ways to counter the Nibiru in Orcust when the deck comes out in a few months. And I'm going to be testing with all of them, I think. I know OCG right now they do play the Fiendsmith cards in Orcust. Even though their Engraver and Tract are both limited to 1, they do play Engraver and Tract in their Orcust deck, and maybe it's like a bit of a blessing to have a smaller deck requirement possible, because that's one of the downsides of Fiendsmith and Orcust, is that there's so much space required to play that the engine. But yeah, I don't know. I personally am leaning towards Horus. I think Horus is going to be our best bet right now. Another consideration as well is whether Abyss Dweller is banned by the time Orcust comes out, because Fiendsmith is awful into Dweller. Wanted can play into Dweller just fine. Like, we can summon Diabel and then we can summon Illusylvia. We just can't recycle the cards. We can't use our Wanted draw, which is a little bummer, but we can still summon out something. But like, if we're playing into Dweller, that means it's our turn going second, and summoning Illusylvia is not going to do much for us. So like, this Wanted engine is not very good going second. The best engine into Dweller is going to be Horus. You know, we're going to put up a lot of big bodies really quick. Dweller does not turn off the summoning condition of the Horus cards because they're not activated effects. They just summon themselves out. None of these activate in the graveyard. So, yeah, it's going to be a quality engine into Dweller if it's still around, which I hope not for Orcust's sake, but let's see if we're going to have Dweller in the format, in which case we're probably going to be forced into this Orcust strategy, or this Horus Orcust strategy. That's going to wrap it up for today. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what hand trap you want me to cover next in Orcust. You know, playing Orcust, which engine we want to talk about as well. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. And with that, we'll catch you guys in the next one. We'll see you soon.